So now I'm going to throw a picture that I make. This is sort of my
signature?
I don't know, signature form that I make, I guess. Shape of picture that I make.
How many pounds is that?
This is 4.5. So it's a little bit based on like the medieval jug, sort of. This sort of classical picture shape that I'm going to throw, and this is the form that I start with. You know, it's got a little more lift. Those tended to be heavier in the bottom, but basically a smaller foot and it bellies out and then comes back into a smaller neck. You know, I like it because it's a little more elegant of a form. It gives it the lift off the table with this smaller foot.
Then you're going to put a different kind of spout on it?
Yeah, I'm going to show you. I'm going to throw that shape first, and then sticky bat. So if you come across some bats that are wobbly like this, if you just take some clay, like 2 blobs sort of opposite, and then kind of stick your bat down like that. Usually that will get rid of the chattering. Oh, didn't really do it in my case. Sometimes that works.
Flat bottom again?
Yeah, flat bottom again. And I pull out, I spread this a little bit wider than I actually want it. Because I find when I'm pulling up the wall, I'm pushing in so much that it sort of pulls the clay, it tightens the bottom up. So I always pull a little bit wider than I want to start. Okay. So making sure that bottom's nice and flat, nice and thin, so it's not a lot of weight. Now I'll go compress it with my rib. Now if you see as I'm pulling up, I'm pushing in, right?
Yeah.
So it's like this shape, this cylinder or the circle is getting tighter as I push in, so it will help you pull more clay at once because of this.
Well, every piece that I end up pulling the highest has always gotten that shape, you know, where it's gone in, not up, straight up.
Well, it supports itself. This shape is
Yeah.
stronger than this shape.
Yeah,
than
exactly.
This shape.
But I'm still having that whatever that little thin line is. I'm still getting that thin line just above the bottom, where I've got too much, too thin, and it starts to collapse on itself.
Yeah. So when you're doing this, you know, you're pulling I have a fair amount of clay here. When you're trying to pull it all up to get nice and even walls, it's important that, well, one, that you're applying pressure very evenly when you pull, but also you always, just like a bowl, when you're trying to go out like this, you need clay down at the bottom to support. So this is always going to be thicker than this. So now this is pretty much thinned out to the thickness that I want, and I can tell that by touch. So now when I pull up, I'm going to basically stop applying pressure at this point and just move my hands up. Does that make sense? Okay.
Now, why are you going to do that?
So that way, she was talking about getting a spot too thin below it. And so you need to keep your wall thickness even.
I see.
You still have a lot of clay at the bottom that you're pulling
Yes,
up.
I still have a lot of clay at the bottom. So right about this point right here, like I'm not really applying much pressure as far as moving clay up and gaining height. I'm just following it up to make sure it stays even. Is it making sense? Everyone sort of? No?
I watch it, but it doesn't happen that way for me.
So now I'm just thinning out this last bottom section right here that still has a little bit extra clay. So that makes sense as I'm moving up.
So your bottom is a lot smaller than you started out with, right?
Right.
Yeah. No, I mean the inside.
A little bit.
You need to, hey Thomas, you need to make your spout on that one over there. If you're gonna make that a picture, you're gonna have to make your spout. Soon, real dry one.
Okay, so now I've thinned the walls to my desired thickness and gotten the height that I need. And now I'm gonna start to push this out and belly this form to create this. So using these ribs, right, I'm using this curve to my advantage, and I'm gonna start down here and I'll push in with the rib, right? Starting that curve from the bottom of the foot to sort of the underside of the belly. Okay, and then from here it bellies out, so now I need to transition from pushing in to pushing out with my hand. So I'm shaping now from the inside. You know, so I'm pushing against the rib. And I don't want to try to do this all at once. So,
You're still being fairly aggressive.
yeah. And now I'm going to go back using the curve and pushing back in to sort of tighten up the neck. Okay. So, get some water out there. So that was sort of the first shaping, sort of movement, pull or movement up. Now I'll go back and bring it out even more. You want to kind of stretch this slowly, otherwise what will happen is, just like when you're pulling up clay, you'll get a spot that's too thin below and it will wiggle, right? Because of the tension. Yeah. So again, starting right at the bottom, pushing in. This time I'm using the metal rib on the inside to compress the walls. Yeah, so I was fairly aggressive up to this point, and at this point I'm really going to slow down, because to stretch it, you know, I guess why I go so fast is that I don't want to add a lot of water in the beginning stages.
That's where I have problems,
Yeah.
because I'm not that aggressive at the beginning.
Because then if it's really saturated with water at this point, it gets really hard to stretch without it collapsing.